Hi my friends, welcome to another pick a card reading. Since we're going into the month of April and we've just welcomed the coming of spring, I wanted to do a reading sort of going off of the idea of spring cleaning. So we're going to be looking at things that you're letting go of as you move into April. So in front of me I have 3 cards here, and each one has a different design on it. So I'll bring them up close to the camera so you can get a better look at the design. There's pile 1, pile 2, and pile 3. Feel free to pause the video if you need a little more time tuning into your intuition and figuring out which of these 3 cards calls to you. And once you know which card is yours, you can scroll down to the description box below and you'll find the timestamps and jump ahead to your reading. Hi my group ones, if you picked this card, this is your reading. I really like the imagery of this card because it makes me think of April showers bringing May flowers, which is kind of on par for the reading since we're going into April. But this card says, divine discontent. Winter falls upon us so spring can bring new growth. What was prized and treasured is now found to be plated. Not the precious gold it was esteemed to be. Look beyond what is. There is a true feast meant for you, not a meager meal. Allow your hungry-hearted soul to lead you towards the banquet table. So I think there's a few things that come through with this card. We're going to start with it and then we're going to dive into a little bit more oracle cards and then expand on that even further with some tarot. But with this, already we have this idea of leaving the fall behind and welcoming new beginnings, new growth. And there's also this idea of letting go of things that didn't live up to expectation, or you put a lot of stock into. Maybe there was something that for a long time you put a lot of your energy into, and this might have been a project, this might have been a friendship, a relationship. It could be something kind of minimal, even a job or something like that. And you put so much effort into getting it to where you wanted it to be. And it just didn't live up to the hype. And you're kind of holding on to that. I'm forgetting the word for it, but there is this like theory, I guess you'd call it, a philosophical kind of theory where when you put a lot of effort into something, it becomes harder and harder to let it go and like quote unquote give up on it. But I don't see you as like giving up on it. I see you as recognizing that you tried it out, you did your best and it didn't work, and that's okay. You can move on from that. And if you can hear my cat in the background, I'm so sorry, he's playing with this laser toy. But yeah, you're being encouraged to look beyond the things that didn't reach what you thought was their full potential, because ultimately they've reached a potential, and it, like, your expectation was just not where it was going. And that's okay, you know, it's a learning journey. So now's the time to look past that and know that there are bigger and better things, not to like minimize your experience with whatever this may be in reference to, but looking ahead, I think you know a bit more about your expectations of things, and because of that, your heart is going to lead you a little more clearly. Yeah. And there are things ahead too that are going to better resonate, I think, with you and your journey and stuff. So whatever this thing may be, you know, it's not that it wasn't meant for you. I think maybe it was potentially meant for you at this time to teach you certain lessons or things about yourself, but it's done that and you can move on. So we're going to pull some Astrological Oracle cards and sort of get some energies of what you may be leaving behind. Just to kind of help you narrow down what this reading could be in reference to. Okay, so we have Aries, and we'll grab another one. And Sagittarius. So, that's so funny. I actually had a feeling that was gonna come out. So, yeah, I think with this combo, like, there's a lot of fire, there's a lot of passion, there's a desire to learn and grow, and I think Aries is very much like the leader, wanting to set those things into action, see things, like plant the seeds. Sagittarius is a very action-oriented. I think whatever this experience is that you're leaving behind, it was something that garnered motivation during its time of development, and there's like, there is a desire within you to push forward, because, you know, you have the Aries energy of leading and seeing a future, and Sagittarius is the part of you that's going to amplify that curiosity of what's to come. And maybe that's also sort of why this current thing didn't exactly work out, is because there was that consistent curiosity for something more, like this pushing of wanting that expansion, wanting that sense of understanding of yourself, and if there's another person involved in this mix, you know, having like a mutual understanding of each other. And I think while fire signs generally work well together, this can also kind of grow into something a little bit harder to tame, to keep control of. So yeah, I think especially with the Sagittarius card, I think you're already putting your trajectory on something in the future. Like, even the imagery of this card, you have the archer taking aim at something ahead in time. So yeah, and I think also with the Aries, you might be spending a bit more time focusing on you. Aries is the start of the zodiac, so this is, again, tying with that idea of, like, new growth. Aries is the beginning of spring, obviously. So it is very much that symbol of new beginnings. Like I said, beginning of the zodiac as well. It's the baby, it's the fresh start kind of energy. So we're gonna move on and grab a couple Work Your Light Oracle and see sort of how that expands on what we've got so far. So we have 3 cards that popped out for you. We have the Initiation, Rite of Passage, Crossing the Threshold. We have Share Your Voice, Come Out of the Cave, Persecution, Expression. And we have Akasha, Your Guidance is Divinely Guided. So, I think, like I kind of briefly mentioned before, the time that you spent cultivating and working through whatever this reading may represent to you, it is not time wasted. This is part of your own journey of growth and self-understanding, and maybe your understanding when it comes to relationships with things outside of yourself, whether that be another person or a career or project or activity or something like that. But there are things that you picked up from this, and I think you're kind of breaking out of this space where you felt confined. The idea of a cave, you're emerging from this place where, like, you kind of, I think of the philosophy, so many philosophies in this, but that philosophical story of, like, if you're in the cave and you don't see light, like, you have no idea what's outside of the cave. You don't know what life looks like, and there's so many concepts that are outside of your awareness. So I think this, because you're releasing your hold on whatever it is you were trying to make work or come to completion, you're able to come out, share your experience, and then the rite of passage and crossing that threshold with the Initiation card is going to allow you to do that learning, especially with the Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius does have a lot of connection to education and philosophy, actually, and sort of that advancement of self and awareness and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think once you come out of this bubble of focus on whatever this thing is, you are going to face a lot more expansion. You're going to go through these moments of, rites of passage, as we saw with the Initiation card. It's going to be these things that you're like, oh, this experience happened to me, and there's going to be people who have had that experience, and they can guide you towards, whatever's meant for you next. They might be part of the banquet table, as the Divine Discontent card stated. So yeah, I think you're emerging past that, and like, even if you look at the imagery of the cards, like, this is so dark and there's like a little bit of light. This is much brighter. You're at the crest of the cave, and this is like the world beyond it. So it's like a gradual thing. It's like you're moving through the cave towards this new and open sense of your own life. So we only have one more deck that I'm going to use for Oracle, and then we'll grab some tarot cards to give you a bit of information, potentially on I guess how to handle, or like some of the things that you might be taking away from what you're leaving behind. So, ooh, okay, got one. We'll grab maybe two more. Oh my goodness. So we've got security, we've got vision, and who else we got? I'm dropping the cards. We have success. So I think you had a vision going into whatever you went into. But I do think that as you're moving out of it, your vision's changed. And I think there, with the security card, there's this sense of a focus on security. Maybe change, like if you're changing careers or something like that, there's this unstable nature of the shift. That's giving you a bit of anxiety. And that's, I think, normal. Like, we fear the unknown, so that's to be expected. But ultimately, I think as you move forward, and as we've seen with like many of these cards, I love how success also came out over top of this card, and it's like, you know, it's the final card in like this graduation of imagery. But the idea of success being like the banquet table with things that will feed your heart and soul is this rebranding of success for you, I think. Because success, I think, for you is shifting from this idea of like putting in a lot of effort and, you know, going through the struggles and toughing it out and, you know, doing your best, making the best of a rough situation or whatever it may be. And you're rebranding that idea of success to mean that you are, like, you move through the world and in your relationships, career, friendships, through your projects, whatever it may be, with a lot more ease. And you realize that the things that are meant for you, you don't have to work as hard. I'm not saying you don't have to put in effort. Like, effort is going to get you places, but I think you're going to recognize how much of your energy was going into things that you were getting very little from. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up with the oracle cards there, and we're gonna get into the tarot. I'll just pull 5 cards. Shuffling the tarot cards for you. I don't know what it is with me today, but I am absolutely trash at shuffling these cards. I guess maybe it's been a bit since I've done a reading. Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to do a bit of a different thing. Normally I take jumpers, but I'm feeling called to split. I know I said 5 cards, but we're going to do 4. And then maybe see the bottom of the deck. So, okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Alrighty. So, the Ace of Cups reversed. This is, I don't want to like sort of pigeonhole the reading, but generally this card is in relation to relationships. And with the cup reversed, this is sort of the like the idea of your energetic cup being full and it is turned over. So this could be a really emotional release for you. Sort of a mix of good and bad, I think. Yeah, just like very much water sign energy, being in the feels. But I think it's also a good reset to refill your cup. Like maybe the water's gone stale and just doesn't taste right. I actually don't know if that affects other people. But anyways, so yeah, this is the Ace of Cups reversed is very much a reflection to me of like all those pent up emotions kind of releasing, and your emotional attention going more inward, whereas previously it had been on a partner. But this is a general reading, so I want to expand that and sort of say, like, this could also still reflect the, like, you spreading yourself too thin with a project or work, or just, like, I don't know, assignments, school, that kind of thing, and you've been holding it together, and this is, like, the first glimpse of release, and it's like, oh my god, I can't carry this anymore. So you're dumping it, you're letting it go, and you're turning that attention from whatever the project was, whatever the relationship or friendship was, you're turning that attention towards yourself and your own recovery. And not to say like recovery in terms of like the experience that you had was bad. I mean, maybe it was, but I think more generally it's like recovery from burnout in a lot of ways. Like emotional burnout of just pushing yourself to do something beyond your capabilities at a certain point. And like it's still not living up to what you need. It's not even expectations, it's literally your needs. So moving on, we have the King of Swords in reverse also, and this is your inner truth coming through. And I think whether you've experienced this already or not, this moment of, it's gonna be like an aha moment, but kind of like a stab to the heart, because, you know, like I said, with the oracles and stuff, you put a lot of energy into this. You put a lot of work into whatever you're doing, and for it to kind of like not turn out, it's a disappointment. But at the same time, like I said, with the Ace of Cups, like your needs weren't being fulfilled, and you gotta turn that energy inward. You gotta refill your cup. And I think you're drawing inward. You're taking time to yourself. Maybe you're not looking exactly to I mentioned burnout before, and like that feels like it's coming back up with the King of Swords reversed here, because you're shutting it off. You're shutting everything off to recharge, pretty much. Once you like figure out the truth of your own needs, and the truth that whatever it is isn't going to live up to what you need it to, you're going to move forward. And I think you're going to realize the ways in which you... The word conned came to mind, but I feel like that's too strong. But the way that you convinced yourself that it was up to you to work on this thing past your... Like, work on this thing to the point where you're neglecting parts of yourself. And I think that's like... you've kind of like gaslit yourself, you've manipulated yourself into believing that because things didn't turn out, you know, there's fault. And I mean, albeit there could be if there are like people involved, but I think ultimately it's just sometimes it's just a not... the fit doesn't work. It's not a good fit, is what I'm trying to say. And that's all right. You know, I think, as we saw in the Oracle cards too, this is an experience that you have gone through as a vehicle to better understand your needs, your expectations, and maybe even your limits. So we're gonna move on. You have a lot of like court cards, I guess a lot being half, but so the Queen of Wands in reverse is sort of this reiteration of like going inwards. The Queen of Wands upright is usually very social and connected, and while I think that you might be coming from that place, maybe you're coming from a place where you were immersing yourself. And honestly, like, I should have said this earlier, but it's kind of just occurring to me now. The thing that you could be working through could be just trying to be more social, and it's just not working for you, and that's fine. You're an introvert, and that's okay. But yeah, I think with the Queen of Wands in reverse, generally, you are reorganizing your ideas of your needs and your habits and, you know, the connections that you have, just realigning things in your life that don't work with how you work. And you're understanding what you're going to tolerate in the future, and you're building confidence as you're like figuring out, hey, what does my life look like outside of whatever this project is? It's kind of like very much your rebirth moment, ultimately, which I think is fantastic. Like I said, though, with the King of Swords in reverse, there is sort of that pain of letting go, of cutting the tie to whatever you had previously, whatever you put energy and effort into, because you make your energy and effort an extension of yourself, and you keep hold of that instead of releasing it to come back. Like that idea of what goes around comes around. You have to let it go for it to go around, you know? So the more you attach yourself to the things that you're putting energy and effort into, the more likely it's gonna hurt when or if it doesn't work out. So just a little tidbit moving forward. But in the last position we have the Six of Cups, which is, I think, your your closing moments to whatever this is. Like, the Six of Cups represents glancing into the past with fondness. So while the initial stages of like letting go and moving forward with whatever this may be, and sort of the energy that you've spent on it, once you have a little bit of time to recharge, hell, even, you know, even maybe reflecting on some of the positives may help you recharge, may help you better understand like what your joy looks like. And you get to have that clean slate again. The Six of Cups kind of represents like, not necessarily a rebirth for me, but like the learning stages. Connection with your inner child as well could also come forward, or just like your younger self, and making a stronger bond and relationship with versions of yourself that maybe you had criticized before, and maybe even making amends with the part of yourself that felt they needed to hold on so tightly to whatever this project, friendship, relationship, or, you know, focus was previously. So, yeah, I think you're ultimately moving forward, and though it may be painful, I think the reflection on the positives is actually going to strengthen your understanding of yourself and your needs, and your experience when you feel ready to, you know, move into a space where you can communicate your experience to other people. I think you're going to have a lot of support, and they are going to offer you a lot more to like feed your spirit. So that is what I'm seeing for you, Group 1. Thank you so much for letting me read for you today, and I hope to see you next month. Bye! Hello, my pile 2. If you picked this card, this is your reading for what you are spring cleaning out and what you can expect moving forward. So, this card says, "From nothing to everything. Oh, my friend, if you are longing to be written on, become a blank page. Sometimes you are asked to surrender a fantasy because reality is knocking at your door. It is a divine paradox that reality may deliver you what you have been fantasizing about, but in an unexpected form. The divine knows how it will work best. Let go with trust in your heart. The divine is guiding you from fantasy into the fulfillment of what you have imagined." So, okay, if you had any inkling of being drawn to pile 1, excuse me, this pile could also be for you. Like pile 1, because there's a lot of common themes between the two. I'm already finding with this card alone, but I think whatever you're doing, this is like full reset, from nothing to everything. So you are letting go of everything that kind of once defined you. And while that might be scary, you're walking into a new phase of your life that is going to fulfill you, and I think you're going to find a lot more of yourself there. So if there's anything that you feel you have lost over time from your life before a given point, it just wasn't meant for you, and that's okay. We're letting things go. And I said this with pile 1 too. If you put a lot of energy and effort into whatever it is you're leaving behind, and I guess for you it's pretty much everything, if you tried to make it work for a long time, don't beat yourself up about it, because I think you learned a lot along the way in terms of like what you're looking for yourself. And yeah, you've got your whole life to figure it out. So we're gonna pull some Astrological Oracle cards, get a little bit more energy, see what we're working with. Okay. So we have Sun and Taurus. So with this combo, the Sun is a focus on the self, maybe even a little bit of the ego, but I don't think in a bad way. I also think with Taurus, like, Taurus is very grounded, but also sort of involved in the material and the beautiful side of life, like physical beauty. So this may be a time that you're like resetting your views about yourself, and you're centralizing your comfort, you're centralizing your own sense of confidence, and like your views of yourself being beautiful and stuff like that. I went through a phase years ago now, where I had to sort of redevelop my confidence, but I wanted to expedite it, I guess. And I had this motto that I got a lot of looks for, I'll admit, but I said becoming more vain was the best thing that I ever did for myself, because I put so much more value into who I was that I became unshakable when it came to people trying to belittle my needs, or trying to belittle me in general, or take hits at my confidence, or if people didn't value my time. I was like, nope, because I'm worth more than that. I deserve more than that. And even though the phrasing of my little motto is a bit towards the conceited, I think that like hyperbolic idea helped me get to this point where it's like, oh, having that sense of self-confidence, and just self-belief, self-love isn't like, it's not that extreme, you know? It doesn't take much to get to a point where it's like a good amount of love for yourself. So pushing myself like far beyond it, it was kind of like a fake it till you make it, but it worked. It worked really well, so feel free to take that. Maybe don't say that line to your therapist, because mine certainly gave me the side eye, but that's fine. Like I said, I was unshakable, so that didn't bother me. But anyways, so with the Sun in Taurus, you're highlighting the second house as well. So the second house represents abundance, money as well, and the things that you hold dear. So with the Sun, I think you're shining a light on those things. So, yeah, money might become something that you focus on a little bit more going into the future. Like once you like leave everything behind, you might be leaving a job or whatever. Something that gives you a lot of stability. You might be leaving that and embarking on something new, but from nothing to everything. And like with the Taurus card here, like, and sun illuminating the aspect that is associated to the things that or like, you know, wealth and abundance, earthly possessions, that kind of thing. But this combination also, I feel like it's it just focuses so much on self-love to me. And I think if we sort of reduce Taurus to the earth sign that it is, there is value on rest, but if you think of the idea of earth being like plants and stuff like that, and sun is like a key component to growth. So I think that illumination and that warmth, that compassion that you have for yourself is actually going to help you grow more than your self-criticism for like where you're coming from, is basically what I'm trying to get at. I don't know why I'm struggling so much more with this reading than I was with the first reading, but I do see a lot of overlap here. So we're going to grab some Work Your Light Oracle and just get a little bit more information, see a little bit more of the vibes, you know. Oh, I don't know if I've ever gotten this card before. Boundaries. Where do you need to establish better boundaries? That's what I'm saying. Honestly, feel free to steal my motto from years ago, because it certainly helped with establishing my boundaries then, so. Okay. No. Wait, postpone, pause, say no. So this card typically I find associates with boundaries, but I think also when it comes to people-pleasing tendencies, following the expectations of individuals in your life rather than yourself. If, you know, there's an expectation that kind of you don't follow and people criticize you for it, the boundaries come in, but also like you can just say like, no, that doesn't apply to me. I think this card also represents holding space in a lot of ways, listening to yourself, to others as well. And the word pause really sticks out to me because I think of meditation, surrendering, which we saw in the From Nothing to Everything card at the very beginning. Surrendering, letting go of things that you can't control, and just taking a back seat for a while. Also, I forget if I mentioned this for Taurus, but Taurus represents rest as well. So, okay. the last card is Unbound. So releasing soul patterns, contracts, and past lives. Oh my gosh, this resonates so much with what From Nothing to Everything was saying. So yeah, when you're leaving pretty much everything behind, from your previous life. I have to sneeze. Hold on. Bless me. So yeah, this is quite literally defining your life prior to this moment of change as a past life. This is a past version of yourself. You are rewriting your life. You're becoming the blank page that we talked about earlier. Releasing soul patterns. This, soul patterns and contracts as well. So this can be symbolic of the expectations others had for you. How other people expected you to play a role in their life. And I think one thing also with boundaries and sort of realigning yourself, valuing your time, valuing your energy, and like who you are, really highlighting that firm sense of self, that stubborn, stable self. I think you're realizing that the expectation other people have for you has always been for you to make changes to your life that allows you to fit into theirs. And I think once you realize that you've been living outside of your life and you've become fluid to fit into the lives of others, you've lost that stability that we see with the earth sign. And I think that's an important part of your own experience, your feeling of being you. So asserting yourself, saying, no, I'm not going to bend into the shapes that you expect me to. You're cutting those ties automatically because there's not going to be the same time or space that you've put effort into making available for yourself in the lives of others, and like just in terms of the different facets of your own life. You're realizing that a lot of things just don't work for your natural schedule. And like, I'm not saying this is the schedule that is like the 9 to 5 schedule or whatever. I mean, maybe, but instead it's like your body's reaction to the ever-changing modes of the world around you. And if people aren't on the same wavelength, then like you're not accommodating that anymore. And I think, okay, I was wondering how postpone from the no card came into this. I think you've known this for a while. And you kept postponing your action because of potentially your inability to set boundaries that actually aligned with how you move through the world, but also because you kind of ingrained the expectations other people have set on you as your own expectations of self, or like what your life is supposed to look like by the book. And I think you're realizing at this point that that just doesn't serve you. And that, I think, you know, everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people go through at various times in their life. So, the good news is you're moving out of this phase. You're leaving this behind, and you're stepping into this new phase where you are, it's like experiencing everything for the first time with like glasses on, I guess. Like, it's not so blurry. Yeah, you just have this sense of clarity, and the world is not as you once knew it. So, pulling a few keyword cards, we have Labradorite with imagination. We've got Aquamarine with adaptability. And we have Turquoise with balance. I really like the colors of these cards together. So, imagination, I think this is really coming, it's coming through in, I think maybe I even use the word reimagining yourself, but you're, that's exactly what you're doing. You're reimagining what your life is. You're reimagining what your life would look like if you didn't follow these expectations and force yourself into spots and shapes that, you know, fit into other people's lives but didn't necessarily accommodate with yours. And I think while you may have learned adaptability through those situations, through those scenarios, and you can apply that adaptability, there is a difference between that and breaching your own set boundaries. So I think understanding when you're being adaptable needs to be balanced with the idea of those set boundaries. And I think that will come with the grounding self-work of the Sun and Taurus together. Sort of that rebirth of self, becoming the blank page, and you're the only one with the pen. Nobody is writing down the expectations for you. You get to write it, and you can write it as you go. Like, it doesn't have to be a thing where you start writing it and finish before you put yourself out there in the world and you make connections and you start your new job, and you know, you just pick up life and you run with it and you take notes as you're going. Yeah, I think that's, like, you're gonna find a lot of things balance better in your life through this self-exploration. So we're gonna set these cards aside and pull some tarot cards for you. Alright, group 2, we're going to take a look at your tarot. I'm just going to give them a shuffle. And for group 1, I split it into 4 different piles. I just felt called to do something a little bit different this month. So I'm going with it. I'm listening to my higher self. Okay. And we've got interesting. Okay. So in the first spot we have the Page of Wands. So the Page of Wands is I feel like this aligns with your ongoing discovery of yourself. This is a card of exploration, of letting loose a little bit. Especially like if you are letting go of everything, like your work, you might be going into a new field, you might be going into a new relationship, or just letting go of an old one. You might be moving, you might be, switching up your friend group, your interests, everything at once, once you step outside of that, you're like at the beginning of the playing board now. And there's so many different opportunities that open up for you. So many different avenues, paths. It might be a little bit overwhelming, but I think with that comes this experience of free-spiritedness. There's this sense of release, and you might be exhausted from your experience before, but it doesn't stop you from getting inspired by the idea of what your life will look like as you move forward on your own. Or just like, not on your own, but like centralizing yourself. So, you've got the Three of Pentacles reverse immediately following. And I think this is partially why I said alone, because this card does indicate you doing a lot of solo work. But I think that aligns well with like Taurus and Sun. Like you're definitely focusing on yourself and like rest and rejuvenation, sort of setting the cornerstones to building yourself up again, building your new life. So yeah, I think you're leaving behind a lot of energy of trying to fit into things that didn't work for you. And I think you feel that this probably has an effect on your inner sense of self and your understanding of your own alignment. You may have recognized that your life didn't look like what you had anticipated. And now you're restructuring it. But you're going to have to do that on your own. And that might be daunting. But at the same time, like even with the imagery of the card, you're kind of like planting these seeds and tending to them over time, watering them and watching them grow. And the combination of the Sun and Taurus giving this idea of growth happening with warmth is like you being compassionate with yourself. Yeah. Having like a safe place to grow is really important. So next we have the Nine of Wands. Yes. I always have trouble knowing because the numbers are sideways. I never know if it's a 9 or a 6, but it is a 9. So the Nine of Wands in reverse. So this is, and I've already mentioned it, like your process is undoubtedly overwhelming because you're starting from scratch, and whether you chose it or not, like there's a lot ahead, and especially if you're like considering all the different directions you can go in now, like that can be incredibly overwhelming. But I think because of your previous experience, you have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of things that you can rely on within yourself, and even stuff that you've kind of, like, you used to do, but over the years you've kind of stopped doing it. Like, I think muscle memory will kind of work to bring that out. Yeah, I think you've got the reserves and the resources to make it through despite the overwhelming nature of your experience. And I think you're coming out of this period of struggle, and that struggle could be related to your external situation, whatever you're leaving behind, or it could be an internal struggle that has just left you kind of exhausted, maybe a bit defensive, and you're a lot more aware. You're a lot more attentive to the things happening around you, and sort of the, I guess, the nuances of what different events mean to you now. And this is a part of growth, but I think there are lines to where it can become a factor that does hold you back. But ultimately, like I said, your inner power and like the work that you put into understanding yourself and your needs and boundaries and stuff like that is really going to help you know the limits of what you're moving into, for your own, like, security. So in the last place we have the Three of Swords, and I think there is going to be, I mean, I'm sure this is expected, but there is going to be this idea of emotional pain because you are leaving a lot of things behind and starting from scratch. Like, I keep saying it, but you have an overwhelming amount of possibilities ahead of you of what you can become, and like, you have this immense strength, and you have the time to rest and really understand yourself and, you know, regain that self-confidence. But there are going to be moments that, you know, you grieve the life that you had, maybe the work that you put into the life that you had previously, and yeah, you might even be sad that things didn't work out, or hurt that you had so many expectations placed on you to fit into these, like, carved out areas of other people's lives instead of there being space for you. But I think, like, your experience moving forward and paving the way to your new life, you're going to move out of this place of hurt and heartbreak and into something that is a lot more freeing. Like, your free-spirited nature that we saw with the Page of Wands is going to come out, and you're going to experience such a like, lush life. So don't let the Three of Swords kind of scare you. It's just a reminder that it is okay to grieve the things that you are leaving behind, even if they do not serve you anymore. It is part of the human experience. So that is what I'm seeing for you, Group 2. I hope this gave you a little bit of insight, and I will see you next month. Bye! Hello, my Group 3s. If you picked this card, this is your reading. So your card says, Beyond the Threshold of Fear. It is your fear holding you back, like a bar behind the door. Your relationship with fear is changing. No more shall it hold you in its thrall. You are becoming able to observe it, to experience it, to have compassionate wisdom rather than resistance. Oh, what a spiritual marathon you have been running. Now the end is in sight. The power that you used to give fear is now transferred to your extraordinary heart. So, in terms of what you are spring cleaning out of your life, out of your mind, is your attachment to fear. Is your belief in fear, the stock that you put into fear, and how that has guided you away from things. Yeah, your views on what fear has done for you and to you are shifting. I think you're getting a little bit more clarity, and you're releasing some of the limiting beliefs that you had that are tied with the ideas of things you should fear. I think you're also probably coming out of an experience. You're spring cleaning, you're letting go of an experience where you probably had to carry a lot of heavy emotional weight. And I think you probably did a lot of soul work. A lot of shadow work is probably the better word. Oh, excuse me. I keep yawning. So I think you're a bit tired, maybe, from the amount of energy that you've put into sort of digging up the different parts of yourself and examining them to see who you are and the pieces of who you are that you like and don't like, and what you need to let go of in order to move forward to a more realized version of yourself. And part of that, I think, is also tied to fear. But any power that you've given fear previously, you're now realizing that facing any fears that you might have, or just like figuring out that those fears don't hold the same power over you, is actually a strength. It's a superpower for you. So we're going to grab some oracle cards, some Astrological Oracle, and sort of see the energy that we're working with for you in this reading. Okay, so we've got Luna and we have Gemini. So together, this encourages you to ask different questions and sort of contemplate the different ways in which your understanding of things, your views on things can be interpreted, and if there are alternate ways that you can kind of come to a conclusion that's outside of what you once understood to be like the amalgamation of all the pieces of your understanding. Basically considering that your first answer to a question might not be the only answer. So when we look at the cards individually, I want to stress that Luna represents like our hidden selves. If you think of the phases of the moon, you also go through phases, and some of those phases, there is a dark side. It's very normal. We all have our cycles, and we are not perfect people, so it's perfectly okay for you to recognize those dark sides of self. And I want to use the term dark kind of loosely, but you, even with the dark sides of yourself, like, you are still whole. You are still a complete person. And even if you want to reshape and change those dark sides and stuff, like, really consider what that restructuring is going to look like. Consider all the perspectives, and I think that's also where the Gemini aspect comes in. But Gemini also is this idea of communicating and being social, exchanging ideas. So where Luna is sort of your emotions and your dark side and stuff, Gemini is that communication factor, having an outside perspective on your inner emotions. So this might be you letting go of your inner mental cycles, and your work on your self-reflection for your shadow work, and moving towards a place where you can communicate your experiences to other people in your circles, maybe a therapist, just expanding on those ideas and allowing yourself to take in new perspectives. So we're going to pull some more oracle cards. We're going to grab some from the Work Your Light Oracle. Oh my goodness, that was so fast. We've got one already. We have Pleiades, double mission, channeling and uplifting humanity. Grab a couple more. This one wants to come out. Awakening, energetic upgrades, a new way of being, and integration. Makes sense. And one more card. There we go. Imrama, where are you being called to journey to? So, for these cards, we have a few different messages coming through. For Pleiades, talking about a double mission, I think this also relates to the Gemini card in terms of perspectives, taking in new perspectives while also sort of establishing your new perspectives of self. So you've got these two different parts. You've got the inner and outer experience, and it is sort of in your life path anyways to go through this experience where you're recalibrating, you're recentering yourself and challenging the notions that you've had about every aspect of life. You're letting go of things that don't serve you anymore. And I think once you release that also, and like sort of incorporate this idea of channeling and working to better understand and be empathetic towards the emotions of people outside of yourself, sort of that engagement in just in a sense of empathy, really, beyond your focus inward, which I think you've done a lot of already. And once you go through this double mission, you'll have this moment of release. Like, not to sound like, ooh, but it'll feel like you're floating. Like a weight will be lifted off of you. And it's like, you can't help but lift yourself. And with that, like, especially if you kind of allow people in to have that communication, to have that communicative relationship, I think you're also going to allow other people to provide their presence in a way that is affirming to them energetically as well, if that makes sense. Like, those people will feel like they are I guess a part of your journey, and that is a really, really lovely connecting factor. So you're leaving fear behind and you're welcoming this new ability to have an empathetic connection with other people through communication of those deep emotions and that self-growth. So with exactly what I just said, those moments of self-growth, I think you're going to have this awakening moment. You're understanding that the ways in which you experience the world deserve to be challenged at this point in your life. They served a purpose, but at this point, change is happening. And your ideas of the world are shifting in a way that kind of shakes your worldview a little bit, but I think it's for the better. The Awakening card tells me that you are likely to accept this and kind of step into it as a new way of being. I think any inner work that you do is so grounded in that deep emotional self that it's going to be hard to revert back without noticing your own dark side, your own flaws, the things that you need to work on. And it might be a bit of an ugly feeling at first, but I think you're going to harness that energy and it's going to continue to motivate you. And you're going to find over time, the more that you do this, the more that you communicate and sort of do that inner and outer work, it's going to be easier to integrate that pattern of thinking into your day-to-day life. And then you can kind of like relax the inner cycles of your own thoughts and potentially your self-criticisms. With Imrama, where are you being called to journey to? This could be in a physical sense. You could be leaving behind a place. This could be in a not literal sense, figurative, that's the word I'm looking for, in a figurative sense, where you have a new goal, you have a mission, something that you now want to work towards. Since you're leaving behind this element of fear, you're opening yourself up to the potential to work towards a bunch of new things. Like, you've got so much free time and space that is released from, like, it comes from your release of worry and fear and anxiety and all those like heavy kind of, I want to call them like prickly feelings. I don't know if that'll make sense to anybody else, but like that's how like fear and anxiety kind of manifest in my body physically. So yeah, you're releasing that to propel yourself and move forward, to move towards the things that really matter to you. We're going to pull some keyword cards and then hop over to the tarot just to get a full idea of what you can expect. Okay, we've got a couple cards, but I'm going to grab one more. We've got compassion. That makes sense. Organization. I love that the cards are kind of matching the previous oracle, like the colors. There we go. Transition. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me. First of all, the compassion for yourself is incredibly important through this transitional phase. And the fact that transition's emphasized here, I think you're definitely going to notice the changes that come from you moving past the threshold of fear. So one of the big things is you're going to harness this compassion for yourself because you've done so much inner work and you're able to look at yourself a little bit more critically and sort of work towards this sense of growth to the point where you are happy with your reflection of yourself. Because, like, we can be happy in who we are at a given moment. But if you're looking back on yourself and you're still, like, I mean, it's okay to cringe at yourself, I guess, like, past versions of yourself, but, like, still have compassion, you know, recognize the things that you maybe could have done better, recognize your internalized biases and that kind of thing, but have compassion and understand that you are on a growing journey. You are on a learning journey, and, like, really consider the difference between who you were then and who you are now. What has changed? And, like, with that change, that progress, that growth, allow yourself to have compassion for the struggle that got you there, for all the icky feelings, all the prickly, spiky feelings that you had to deal with when you were confronting fears and anxieties. With organization, I think this is your ability to put your life into perspective, organize your thoughts, and do it in a way that you can communicate to others. Oh, I also want to go back to the compassion card, because I think this also relates to people external to yourself, that idea of a shared empathy aspect. I think that really comes out here in having compassion for the experiences of other people and their willingness to be there for you. The compassion might come from other people as well. But yeah, organization, I feel like, also kind of lends to this idea of things aligning, or even people in your life kind of aligning with your needs at this point. And it's not like a forced thing. It's just things falling into place is very much the energy that I get from that card. So, in your transitional period, opening yourself up to community, to the compassion that is offered to you, is going to help you to have this organized support network, in which you will know kind of who to go to for what, or what to do when, that kind of thing. And you'll be able to restructure your thoughts in a way that are not only, like, self-affirming, but that idea will be reassured by the organization of individuals around you. This could also relate for some people to a literal organization, like a business kind of thing, or like a nonprofit, something like that, something that offers help or support in a transitional period. So who knows, maybe the Gemini aspect to your Gemini Luna cards is a therapist from an organization that helps with mental health for people going through whatever you're going through, or just, you know, a therapist or a psychologist in general who's going to be able to give you really good advice on overcoming and stepping beyond the threshold of your fear. So we're going to set these cards aside and look at your tarot cards to wrap up. So I'll shuffle your cards. Okay, so for the last couple of piles, I have been shuffling, but this time around I've been separating them into piles. I've been separating the deck into 4 piles instead of taking the usual jumpers, just to switch it up. I felt called to, so that's what I'm doing. Gotta listen to the intuition, you know? Okay, so for you, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Interesting. Okay. So we have the 9 of Wands in the first place here. And this is an indication of your resilience, your strength, and your willingness to push yourself. And I think at certain points you perhaps pushed yourself past boundaries, past your own boundaries, because you were like challenging your own resiliency. And I think also this is going to be a very interesting, weird kind of take, but I think crossing your own boundaries is more comfortable than sometimes challenging parts of yourself, examining parts of yourself. And I say this doesn't have to apply to everyone, but it is possible that maybe in your youth, or just previous to this change, you had a history of having your boundaries crossed, and there's an expectation that your boundaries don't matter because they were so easily crossed. And because of that repetition and the fact that you were fine ultimately with those boundaries being crossed, that is like a safer outcome than the unknown. The idea of any difference, even asserting your boundaries, fear of asserting those boundaries could be sort of a main thing that you're grappling with right now, because it has been so easy to just let your boundaries be sidestepped, or to not create boundaries at all, for fear of them being disregarded, ignored, undervalued, left unseen, you know. So with the 9 of Wands, I think you're building a resiliency, as we saw with the Oracle cards, to strengthen yourself a little more and communicate these boundaries a little clearer and sort of stick to them. I think, yeah. Again, for some, but I feel like it's really strongly coming through, like that persistence of your boundaries being crossed, and it being almost like a test when it came to your relationships with others, is how available you were to them. And there was a fear surrounding that, changing that, not being available. You want to be seen as reliable, and that's understandable, but especially with the Ace of Cups next to it, this is an indication that your cup is not full. You are not taking care of yourself. And this turning point is an encouragement for you to start doing exactly that. You have repressed emotions, as we saw with the Luna card, and probably some skewed views on the experience of different emotions. And you're just now kind of moving into the stage where being emotional in these productive ways is acceptable to you. You have the compassion to allow yourself to do that now. And I think with the Ace of Cups, this self-love is going to heighten your intuition. You're going to better understand your needs and boundaries. You're going to start noticing the presence of feelings in your body. Like I was saying earlier with the like spiky feeling of anxiety, I think you're going to start seeing how those things manifest in you. But you are going to have to grapple with those repressed emotions that are coming through. And I think also you have you've been running on empty for so long, and you just need to flip the cup. You need to start collecting the rain, letting yourself, rest and go inward, which I think you're already en route to do, just to better understand what your needs and boundaries are. So we have, is that an 8? Yes. We have the 8 of Swords after that. And this really brings up the idea that I was stressing in the Oracle cards, that you might have self-limiting beliefs, and sort of negative thoughts or just skewed ideas when it comes to fear, boundary setting as well, as we've come to realize. And I think there could have been a potential for you for a long time to kind of, because of the suppressed emotions that you had and your inability to communicate because your fear of a lack of safety or a lack of space to express those feelings. I think it kind of left you feeling trapped. It left you feeling victimized in a lot of ways, and without something to lift you out of that. So I think the work that we saw in the Oracle cards in the first part of this reading is the work. It is the leverage that you need to lift yourself out of that mentality, but it is entirely possible. You are not stuck, even though it feels like it. You are already breaking past what you thought fear was. It doesn't have the same hold on you anymore. You've reached your limit. Yeah, you're running on empty, and at this point it's fumes, and it's time to restructure that. Consider the ways in which you've restricted yourself and ask yourself if you need to do that. To close off your reading, we have the Moon card, which represents, I think, very much for you, the illusion of fear. That sense of anxiety, the prickly feelings. I'm not saying that those feelings are going to go away by any means. That is part of the human experience, is to feel those emotions, and with the Luna card, you might feel those emotions pretty deeply. You might have suppressed those emotions in the past, and they're kind of slipping out in different ways now, and that might be through anger, outbursts, just isolating yourself, some kind of harmful behavior towards yourself in order to quell those feelings. And that, I'm going to tell you up front, not going to work for you. What is going to work for you, and we saw it in the Oracle cards, is harnessing that energy of communication, working with other people, confronting the dark sides of yourself, having compassion, and changing your perception of what fear does for and to you. Because your fear is not a protection for yourself. In a lot of the cases that I've seen in the cards here, it is actually doing the opposite. So, the illusion of fear that you have needs to be reconstructed. And I think you can do this, and I think you intuitively know how to do this, because deep down, you have these feelings. Like, you just need someone to express them to help you organize your thoughts. And that might also be how the organization card jumps out for you. So, yeah, I definitely recommend for you, as you're moving through this transition, working with someone, probably a professional, because they will give you the best advice on like setting boundaries and that kind of thing, which I think is an area of your life that needs attention in order for you to refill your cup and basically move into the best quality of life. But yeah, that is what I'm seeing for you, Group 3. Thank you so much for letting me read for you today. Take a deep breath, drink some water, and I will see you next time. Bye!